This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
And welcome in to the latest and freshest edition of Tigers Talk with Chirco and Company. I am your host, Vito Jerome Chirco, and it is episode number 40 now. The big 4-0 here on Tigers Talk alongside Doc, my co-host as usual, and the Podfathers I like to call him, John Mackrum. What's going on today?
Bada boom! Realest guys in the room! How you doing?
Vito, I'm here. My goodness. If I told you that in the last week the Tigers would not have won a game, after your dancing, after we had the positivity podcast, it all went to crap in 1 week. I cannot believe what has happened. And I really feel for Brad Ausmus because really everything that he's trying to do to get this Tiger team to right the ship has failed. And watching that first game versus the Nationals was indicative of everything that we've seen. The Tigers took a lead, but in the end, they just couldn't hold it. And I put out a tweet on our Twitter page at Detroit Podcast. How much confidence do you have that the Tigers are going to win the game when it was 4-4? The highest I got was like 20-30%.
Yeah, at that point in the game, I didn't have the biggest level of confidence myself after seeing how poorly they have played going into Monday night's game against the Nats, who are a great ball club in the NL East right now. They're right up there with the Mets, and I love the Nats. I love what they bring every fifth day, the starters they can throw out there, and it makes me jealous because they have Max Scherzer, they have Steven Strasburg, who got into a new 7-year deal, I believe, for $175 million in totality, a big dollar deal for a guy that has had Tommy John surgery, but is still on the younger side, so could be elite, has shown glimpses of that over the course of his career, but never like consistently that dominant ace every fifth day, and because of injuries too. But he was more than good enough yesterday against the Tigers, but the Tigers scored the runs. They were up 4-1, and the bullpen failed them yet again, Doc. And when they tied it up, the Nats at 4 runs apiece, and at their home ballpark, I didn't have much hope either in the Tigers winning that ball game at that point.
Yeah, Vito, it was one of those things, and the first thing we'll talk about, obviously, on this podcast is Brad Ausmus' decision late in the game in using Victor Martinez and Jared Saltalamacchia, and it backfired, but I don't think it was as awful a decision. It was bad because it didn't work out, but we'll break it down. We're also going to have to hit on what the hell happened with Bryce Harper. It sparked off a debate, a good one, on our Twitter page and nationally. Everyone's talking about the gesture that Bryce Harper made, and later on in this podcast, I'll get Vito's opinion. And I'm looking forward to your guest. Who we got calling into this podcast?
We have Ryan Ford from the Detroit Free Press. Now, a friend of the podcast at this point. He's been on how many times? He's been on, I think, the most amount of times, besides for my brother when he's co-hosted with me and called in. So Ryan Ford from the Free Press will be on today to discuss Brad Ausmus' fate. Is it inevitable at this point, Doc, that he will be a goner and a goner sooner than later here? And there have been guys from the Tigers' perspective who have been fired mid-season managerial-wise in the past. The latest one, before Ausmus, if it does happen this year, was Phil Garner. And Garner was fired, and who replaced him? Probably nobody will really know this one, but Luis Pujols, a no-name, replaced Phil Garner at that point in time, and they went on to lose 100 games, I believe, that season. That was during the despicable Tigers in the early 2000s.
Fun fact, I was at the opening series that year when Phil Garner started as the manager, and CeCe Sabathia was the pitcher for Cleveland, I think, that opening weekend, and he was dominant. It was an interesting kind of game, but you had a sense that Dave Dombrowski was new. He was coming in, and he wanted to kind of set the tone. And I believe that was his Phil Garner was one of the early managers that was there.
Phil Garner was not his manager, so once he got into house to be the GM, the president of baseball operations, he wanted his own guy. And Phil Garner, they started out 0-6 that year, but they were losing against everybody. I know you said CeCe was dominant and whatnot, but everybody was dominant against that Tigers ball club too.
Yeah, exactly. And so now along the course of when we evaluate things, we are all looking at the guy that admittedly is in the crosshairs, Brad Ausmus. And let's look at one of the decisions that he made late in the game. It's 4-4. He brings in V-Mart, and it's obvious he knew and he was aware that first base was open and that Dusty Baker would walk him. And he said, okay, he made the choice, put him up there. He was intentionally walked. Jared Saltalamacchia came up there. They went to the Nationals went to the bullpen, and they forced Saltalamacchia to switch and bat from the right side, where he is noticeably, his batting average is significantly worse. Now, Brad Ausmus took a lot of heat on our Twitter page because, one, people looked at it in hindsight and said, hey, you're wasting V-Mart if this goes into extra innings. You knew that he was going to be intentionally walked. Why are you taking the bat out of his hands? Why are you counting on Saltalamacchia? Basically, everyone's thinking, we all knew what Dusty Baker was going to do. Why are you making these moves? Did you think he could have done anything differently? All Saltalamacchia had to do was get that key 2-out hit, and he just wasn't able to do it. What's really happening, what's frustrating is the Detroit Tigers are not doing anything at all to bail out Brad Ausmus. The mistake that he made was bringing back Lowe. My goodness. He was awful on Sunday. You bring him back for Monday to serve up another meatball? Give me a break. But that decision for V-Mart, how do you weigh in? Because he's taking a killing on Twitter, and a lot of people looking in hindsight are just saying, Brad doesn't know what he's doing.
Well, you don't bring him in to be intentionally walked, and then you blow him because you can't put him in the field. You're not going to after that because you're in the NL. There's no DH. He can't be the DH the rest of the game. So you're wasting his at-bat there in that spot in the game when it was a tie ball game, right, and was going into extras maybe. Could have had him for that point in the game, the most crucial moment of the game when you want to break open the tie. And that's when you can win the game, in extras. So you wasted him earlier in the game in another spot, and I think the time of using him, it was a wasted utilization of V-Mart, definitely. And, well, yeah, you don't want him being walked, so he's walked, so yeah, the decision there, it falls on the manager. And you have to blame Ausmus because he was walked in that circumstance when he could have been used later in the game in extras, maybe if it would have gone to there, if Mark Lowe didn't give up that bomb, which he's allowed 7 earned runs now in 3 straight days and games. So not only 3 games straight, but 3 days straight. And he still used Mark Lowe in that situation with a tie ball game, 4-4. Against a good ball club. Why use Mark Lowe again? That's my bigger problem with Brad Ausmus after looking at last night's game and what transpired, Doc.
Man, it was unbelievable. I mean, how many leads are you going to gain only to have your pitchers and bullpen not allow you to win the game? I mean, the Tigers are doing what they're, the offense is coming around steadily. Yes, there are guys that we're looking at like Upton and Miggy and things like that we're waiting to kind of step it up, but you're getting contribution from JD and Nick Castellanos. Nick Castellanos is on fire. 2 2-run home runs weren't enough. I know 4 runs sometimes is not enough, but something's got to give here, man. It can't be this bad, this long. 7 games with this starting staff, and now, you're looking forward to a matchup with Scherzer and Zimmerman on Wednesday. I don't know, this next 7-game stretch, Jarvie and I talked about it on the Motor City Sports Rant podcast. He might not get out of it. He might not make it to the next homestand. This is a tough stretch. I thought he had to go at least 3-4, maybe 4-3 in order to save his job. But realistically, when we looked at it, we all said maybe 1-6, 2-5, because this stretch is tough. On the road versus Washington, on the road versus Baltimore.
Yep.
This is not looking good, Vito. We're hitting danger zone, and a lot of people are panicking. A lot of people have already tweeted out, fire Ausmus is what you got to do.
Well, everybody wants him gone, and I think his fate is inevitable at this point. I said to you on this podcast, too, if they lost 7 or 8 in a row, and if they make it even more now, 10 in a row maybe, as they're playing the Orioles coming up here too, who can mash. Guess what? Tigers' biggest weakness is their pitching, and the Orioles can mash. This losing streak could extend to 10 games because of that fact being taken into account. And if it does get to 10 games, I think already right now they could fire Ausmus and nobody would be concerned about it. Nobody would go up in arms and say, oh, they made a big-time mistake by firing Ausmus right now. At 14-17, I believe 8 games back now, the White Sox, who have been the dominant team at the top of the division in the AL Central so far this year, could come back down to earth. But first and foremost, you got to start winning games to get into the thick of things, into contention, to even have a chance at maybe, getting to the top of that division, to playing against the likes of the White Sox and beating them head-to-head, and then maybe taking that first place position right now from the White Sox. So you can't even worry about what they're doing yet. It's about the Tigers improving right now. And they have him in. They've lost 7 in a row. And this could get even uglier going forward because they have a few more games here with the Nats, who are really good and better right now than the Tigers from every single standpoint, it feels like, especially the starting pitching. And the Orioles have that deep hitting. 1 through 9, they can mash, hit the home runs. That's what they're known for. They live and die by the long ball. So Tigers pitching has given up those long balls. Mark Lowe has. Anibal Sanchez has. Seems like their whole entire bullpen has. And really everybody outside of maybe, well, really I can't even say that because even the top of their rotation, even their best guy, Zimmerman, maybe only one or two. But still, all these guys, it seems like, are susceptible to giving up the long ball, and you're playing right into the hands then of maybe the Nats a little bit with a guy like Bryce Harper in the middle of their order. But the Orioles, with all the big bats that they have, Chris Davis, Adam Jones, Manny Machado, all these guys can hit the long ball. Okay, so I'm scared about playing the Orioles, and I think this losing streak could extend to 10 games. And if it does, Doc, Brad Ausmus has to go. And I think already right now they could fire him, and everything in the world would still be all right.
So now this is what I love about sports is that you have two distinct camps. A lot of people in the media, a lot of journalists, a lot of professionals are saying, listen, it's not Brad Ausmus' fault. This is a team and a collection of talent that's getting paid a lot of money. And they're lacking leadership. They're lacking the ability to step up in key situations, basically making Al Avila make Brad Ausmus the scapegoat. And you have the other camp that says, listen, they're going to lose quite a bit with Brad Ausmus. Might as well cut your ties now. Might as well make the change in order to maybe salvage this season. In my opinion, I don't think either way, if you fire Brad Ausmus or if you keep him, this Tigers team isn't that good. This is a 500 ball club. They're nowhere near the caliber of the Nationals even, who at the time of this recording are sitting at 20 wins, 12 losses. Right now, we're 14-17. We're scuffling. We got a lot of question marks in the starting rotation, spots 3 through 5. Anibal Sanchez was pretty decent.
But what did he do again? What has been the theme of his season of late, his career of late? It's been that, Doc.
4 innings strong. That's all you can get.
I'll give him 5. You get 5, but if he gets to 100 pitches, his pitch count gets high up there very quick in the 5th inning. And then in the 6th inning, he blows up, implodes, and maybe even sometimes earlier, as you said, in the 5th inning, he implodes. And that's way too early for a number 3 in the rotation guy, Doc.
General Manager Vito,
Yep.
You're in charge of the Detroit Tigers. It is May 10th, and you're looking at this team, how they're playing. You're surveying the landscape. You're hearing night in, night out. V-Mart standing up in the media saying that, hey, it's not Brad Ausmus' fault. We're playing like, bleep. But, you're the general manager. You're in charge of this team. What do you do today? Does Brad Ausmus survive this series if they lose tonight, Game 2 of the series?
Well, if they lose both games, the 2 remaining games of this series, and they're facing Zimmerman, they have Zimmerman going, the Tigers, but they're facing Max Scherzer and Joe Ross. 2 great arms there for the Nats. Probably 2 losses, because their hitting can go into funks, too. So if they do that, don't hit well enough, because their starting pitching hasn't been great enough to really save any leads, right? So they lose 2 more. That's being swept against the Nationals. Then they play the Orioles, but after being swept against the Nationals, they would be 14-19, 5 games under 500. I'm not liking the odds of Brad Ausmus staying as a manager then. I think he gets fired. I think by next week, early next week. I don't think they're going to fire him midweek, Doc, but I think Monday of next week, he'll be gone if they lose these next 2 against the Nationals and lose, let's say, 2 out of 3. They're playing a 4-game set right against the Orioles. If they lose 3 out of 4, for sure, I say he's gone by next Monday then.
Does Brad Ausmus deserve to be fired?
Well, he's a scapegoat, like everybody has said, right? But not everything falls on his shoulders for why they've struggled. V-Mart is right, saying to the detractors of Brad Ausmus, saying, hey, get off my manager. He's not the reason for why we're losing. We're just sucking it up. And he said it in an explicitive and, in that way. I'm not going to do that. But they have sucked it up big time. That's how I'm going to describe it. And it's not only on Brad Ausmus for his mismanaging of the ball club in game and on a game-to-game basis. It's not just on him. It's on the talent being put on the field, and that's on the front office, right? It's really on Al Avila being able to put better ball players going forward. He hasn't done that enough yet to make this team a whole team that can really be a true contender and be better than, first and foremost, be better than a 500 ball club. Right now, they're playing like it. They're, under 500, 3 games under, but they're really, how they've played from going on a winning streak to this big 7-game losing streak now, they are a 500 ball club, the very definition of that. And that's not all because of the mismanaging by Brad Ausmus.
And I just want, the vibe that a lot of fans get, and one that I kind of feel too, is that you feel like the teams kind of wait too long to make moves. You have managers, you have coaches that have been in situations for quite a bit of time, and you don't blow them out. A lot of people are looking at when Bob Quinn came to the Lions, he didn't blow out Jim Caldwell. Al Avila really did himself a disservice and put himself in a pickle because everyone knew. You just knew going into it that Brad Ausmus is a serviceable manager, but he's not a World Series playoff caliber manager. So Al Avila really did himself a disservice now because you're in a situation where the ball club has a payroll, Vito, of $200 million. That is a chunk of change every week, to be, shelling out there. And the fans have turned on the team. The perception of the ball club is negative. Everyone's feeling nervous. Everybody wants Brad Ausmus fired. And now, how does Avila go in and just fire Brad Ausmus, 35 games into a regime? He'll lose face. He'll look like an idiot for sticking with him. That's why when you're a new general manager, the textbook move should be blow out the previous guy. Why? Why would you stick with Brad Ausmus when the upside just didn't match up? His potential didn't match up to what the expectation was. Now, Vito, if this is a ball club with a payroll of $80 million, hell, you can keep Brad Ausmus for the next 5 years.
Forever and ever, yep.
It's World Series or now. With that caveat, you've got to blow up Brad Ausmus. He's got to go. He's got to be fired. It's unfortunate. You got to let him go. The expectations are too high, and it's just based on the fact that you got a payroll of $200 million. You can't be 14-17 with that payroll. You got to make a change, even if it's just for a spark for a week.
And one sub 500 season was bad enough last year, going 74-87, 73-87, whatever it was, 74-87, I believe it was for the Tigers last year. But now a second straight campaign of that with this big of a payroll, as you noted, Doc, it's not acceptable for any manager, let alone a guy who really hasn't proven to improve, right? He hasn't shown that he's learned from his mistakes in the past in his first 2 years and now in his third year and final year of his contract as a manager of the Tigers. He hasn't learned anything, and that's a bad sign of what things are to come for Brad Ausmus if they let him stay as the manager of the big league ball club.
I hate to say it, Vito. I tweeted out on our Twitter page at Detroit Podcast, look, the baseball gods just are against Brad Ausmus. Let's just be real. Every move that he tried to make.
Even the good ones, right?
He's tried to make a lineup change that lasted for all of, 3-4 days? He's tried to do everything. Everything that he's done is blown up in his face. I just think the baseball gods right now, it's the wrong job at the wrong time. He may turn up somewhere else, maybe even in the AL Central later on, and be a good manager. But right now, with this mix and what he's doing, time to go. You're out of here.
Time to go. He's going to be kicked to the curbside very soon here. I could see next Monday, if they lose the next two against the Nats and lose 3 out of 4 against the Orioles, because next Monday they play at home, remember, against the Twins. I think they could fire him before that game, sometime early on in that day next Monday, if they do go on this big of a losing streak going forward as well, Doc.
See this, Vito? This is my thumb. I got it in the prime position. Here it is. Mr. Ausmus, come to my office. Out of here!
You're ready to hit that trigger and boot him out
hit
of town.
Hit the road, Jack.
Yep.
Don't you come back no more. Don't you say, hit the road, Jack. And I don't even know the words. I just go.
But you're trying, and he should hit the road. His name's not Jack, but no, I'm joking.
Hit the road, Jack.
He deserves to get out of here. Out of here. Really quick. And I was going to say, though, you said he might end up getting another job in the AL Central or somewhere else. Not going to happen. Well, not on anybody else's watch, I think, Doc.
Listen, you know who's managing across from Brad Ausmus this series? Dusty Baker. Yeah, he's got the World Series.
Yeah, but he went to the World Series, remember? He went to the World Series with the Giants back in 2002.
That guy
almost won that World Series. Had some good Cubs teams. He won, though, Dusty Baker, remember, Doc,
when you look at the definition of retread, I think Dusty Baker's photo is the definition.
But he's a
How
good...
is he still getting the job?
If you want to hire a retread, he's a retread you hire. And the Nats have proven that. They're off to a great start. 20 wins already. I love the Nats. I love Dusty Baker a lot more than Brad Ausmus. And he is that player's manager to the T, Dusty Baker. Brad Ausmus is kind of that, but is not enough of that or of a disciplinarian to say he warrants another job in the major leagues. And Doc, we have a great guest coming up here on Tigers Talk with Chirco and Company, episode number 40. And our guest today is Ryan Ford of the Detroit Free Press. He'll be on in just a short few minutes here on Tigers Talk with Chirco and Company. Vito Chirco here from the Detroit Sports Podcast Network to tell you about a great sponsor of ours in Top Cat Sales. And looking for team apparel for your high school, your club sports team, or corporation, then look no further than Top Cat Sales, located on the east side of Main Street in downtown Royal Oak, between 11 and 12 Mile. Through founder and former University of Michigan quarterback John Wangler's leadership, Top Cat Sales has developed a tradition of selling and distributing custom Adidas team apparel with the very highest quality and the very best service. Get your organization, school, or club team all in with Adidas today by going online to TopCatTeamSales.com. Once again, Top Cat Sales website is TopCatTeamSales.com. And also remember to follow Top Cat Sales on Twitter at Team Top Cat. And now joining me on episode number 40 of Tigers Talk with Chirco and Company is my friend from the Detroit Free Press, Ryan Ford. The Ford on Twitter. Ryan, what's going on today?
Not much. Just, recovering from that Tigers loss last night.
That was ugly, wasn't it? And a lot of ugly losses of late over the weekend, and now 7 straight losses for the Tigers. And they're at 14-17. as I said, being losers of 7 straight as well. And with all that being said, Ryan, is it officially time now for Tiger skipper Brad Ausmus to be shown the door?
I really don't think so. I mean, I don't know what more he could have done. At some point, the players have to play. I mean, he's made mostly the right moves, especially, he managed his bullpen pretty much perfectly in Sunday's game. And, you don't go out there expecting Mark Lowe to give up 2 home runs, including a grand slam to Bobby Wilson. And, he came right back on Monday night, and you can argue that he maybe got outmanaged a little bit by Dusty Baker in terms of using a pinch hitter. And when he used Victor Martinez to pinch hit, but same time, players got to play. Mark Lowe has to make pitches. He can't be giving up home runs.
Now, let's just play devil's advocate, though, here. I know it's on the talent, on the players on the baseball field getting it done, and they haven't as of yet, and that's why they're 3 games under 500 and losers of 7 straight. But let me ask you this now, Ryan. If the Tigers do go in the direction of ousting Ausmus, who should they turn to?
I mean, obviously they set themselves up fairly well to turn in Lloyd McClendon. He's down in AAA, working, managing Toledo. And he's familiar with a lot of the players on the team, the veterans. So he'd be an obviously instant fix. I think a lot of people would like for them to go back to Jim Leyland, but I don't think he wants to come back to managing. I think he's pretty happy working as a special assistant for the franchise. It means he gets to watch a lot of baseball, and he's not nearly as stressed out.
And you know what? Doesn't have to smoke as many cigarettes then as well, because he's not as stressed out, Jimmy Leland there, because he's not managing a ball club, and he probably doesn't want to deal with the stresses of managing an everyday, ball club right now, and dealing with the everyday job of putting together a lineup and making those in-game decisions. And I don't blame him. And I think also, Ryan, I don't know if you see the same way that I do right now regarding the situation with the team, but I would say that he would see the writing on the wall and see that this team isn't in the best shape right now and in the right shape to truly contend. So why would he, want to come back then and manage this team, right? If he knows they're not going to be much more than maybe a 2 or 3 game above 500 ball club by the end of the season.
I think he actually, I don't know that he thinks that way. I mean, who saw the 2006 Tigers coming out of nowhere basically and making the playoffs? It's tough to tell what goes on behind closed doors of the team, and I think any team can be turned around. I think the Tigers certainly have talent. They have a solid offense. Their starting pitching is troubled right now, but there's certainly talent there. There's past results that suggest they can do it. So I think they're a good managing job. I don't think they're out of it, especially in the American League right now, where no team other than maybe the White Sox have really run away with things. I mean, every other team seems to be mostly in it, at least for a wild card berth. As they say, show up in the playoffs and see what happens. If you get hot for 2 weeks at a time, you can be in the World Series.
And you know what? Could the Tigers, let's just say this, could they turn it around by firing Brad Ausmus? I don't sense that you feel that way truly.
I don't. I don't think that's going to snap the bats into place or, fix whatever's been ailing Justin Verlander and Anibal Sanchez. I mean, Sanchez pitched well last night. Verlander pitched extremely well on Sunday. I'm not a fan of firing guys for the case of firing guys. I understand that it's a lot easier to change one guy than to swap out 25 on a roster, but I don't see it having that much of an effect.
And now 54, I believe the stat is 54 managers have been fired in season since 2000, and only 4 of their replacements have led their ball club to the playoffs in that same season. So not very likely that firing Brad Ausmus means they will go to the playoffs subsequently. And even after maybe changing managers and going to Jim Leyland as a replacement, who has done all this great stuff with the Tigers in the past from 06 to 2013, and specifically, as you noted, in 06 when they came out of nowhere. But at this point, it's more on the talent there that's been assembled that can be placed on the diamond every single day. And it looks like the team right now, and especially as you noted too, Ryan, the starting rotation is despicable. 3 through 5, and what the heck is is wrong with even Verlander at times? Sanchez, we've seen these problems now. They've been prolonged, elongated since last year, maybe even before that. So troubling concerns there in that rotation. And Ryan, can it be turned around? Do you have hope in that?
I think so. I mean, as we saw Verlander pitch really well on Sunday, and I mean that's step one is getting him going right. Jordan Zimmerman, he's obviously solid. He's going to have off days. I mean, he wasn't perfect in his last start, but he pitched well enough to win, didn't get the run support. So that's two. Sanchez, I think he limited the damage the Nationals can do. The Nationals don't have a ton of pop in their lineup beyond Bryce Harper and Daniel Murphy, but at the same time, he mostly pitched well and, was victimized by, his own poor defense and, some rough decisions on when to pull him and when to go to the bullpen. But there's the past track record there. I'm not a Mike Pelfrey fan by any means, but honestly, there's 30 teams in baseball, and I would wager all 30 of them are mostly unhappy with their fifth starter. And, I think the rotation can turn around. They just, obviously I'm not a pitching coach, but make better pitches.
Now, Ryan, will Mike Pelfrey be the most expensive long reliever by the end of the season because of his struggles so far in that fifth starter spot? Does he have to be moved to the pen eventually here? And, make him then, subsequently, as I said, the most expensive long reliever in all of baseball right now?
That's certainly a option. I think at some point it's kind of odd to talk about, one thing to talk about moving him to the pen because of ineffectiveness, but I don't think anyone in sort of that group of Tiger starters has really stepped up and established that they want his spot. Norris is still hurt. Matt Boyd hasn't been all that great. Michael Fulmer, he's young. He was great in one start, not so great in another. I don't think he's established a claim on that spot. Shane Green is hurt. I think the Tigers would definitely like to see someone step up and maybe force Pelfrey to the bullpen. It's telling that they've already, talked about it in some form of, answering the question of what does he have to do to keep his rotation spot. But, until there's a better option, I think they'll keep trotting him out there because, as you noted, he's quite well compensated. $8 million a year. Actually, it might be $9 million. And the Tigers have shown willingness to eat a contract and just cut a guy. Dimitri Young comes to mind. Maglio Ordonez a few years ago, where they benched him even though they were paying him quite a bit of money. I think at the end of the day, winning is the most important thing. They'll try to do what is best for that. But I don't think anyone has really stepped up to force him out of the rotation yet.
Ryan Ford of the Detroit Free Press on episode number 40 of Tigers Talk with Chirco and Company right now. And Ryan, any hope for the Tigers Tuesday night against Joe Ross or Wednesday night against Maxwell, Cy Scherzer, as he used to be called when he donned the old English D?
I think definitely, Wednesday is going to be one heck of a matchup because you'll have Scherzer. They'll be going against Scherzer, but they'll have Zimmerman on the mound facing his old team. Kind of an interesting little quasi-trade rematch there. As far as Tuesday night, I think they absolutely have a chance against Ross. Ross is fantastic. He might be actually more talented than his brother Tyson, who pitches for the Padres. The Tigers' bats, they're there. Nick Castellanos is having an amazing start to the season, even if DSP noted he's actually walked fewer times than Bryce Harper did on Sunday. If Miguel Cabrera didn't hurt himself too badly on Monday night, he'll be there in the lineup. And, anytime you've got Cabrera, I think Victor is going to sit. Actually, I'm not entirely sure. I'll have to wait to see the lineup. But, they've got the bats. At some point, you have to think Justin Upton will maybe make contact with a pitch. And when he does that, it tends to go a long way. So I think there's absolutely a chance. They can still take 2 out of 3 in the series.
Ryan, what are your thoughts on what Bryce Harper did Monday night as they walked it off? He came out there after being ejected and dropped the F-bomb, F you to the umpire who ejected him. It wasn't clean, wasn't cool, but he's this guy that exemplifies making baseball fun again. That's the motto there in Nationals land with Bryce Harper, and then he does all that. Was it a classless act by Harper?
I don't want to say classless. I think he got caught up in the moment of being very excited. Both excited in the victory and also he wanted to make a point to the umpire, and he didn't get a chance to make that point when he was ejected for arguing balls and strikes. I think he could have handled it better, but he's Bryce Harper. He gets fired up, and he makes baseball fun again just by playing it and by being excited about the game. And, I actually wish baseball had more players like
Now, Ryan, really quick, wanted to ask you before I let you go today here on Tigers Talk, episode number 40 of the podcast. Give me your American League top 5 ball clubs right now. And I know we have your Mariners. They're going to be towards the top. And then the Astros, where would they appear right now? I know they're not going to be in your top 5, but where would they be ranked for you in the American League right now? And where can the Astros be, you think, by the end of the season? Could they, maybe break back into the top 5 where many people projected them to be at the start of the season?
I certainly think they can get back there. I mean, I don't think I would put them in the middle of the pack right now. Certainly their record doesn't place them there, but I think the problems they've had are mostly fixable. I'm always apparently an optimist, but right now their bullpen, their pitching staff as a whole has just not produced. I mean, Dallas Keuchel has taken a huge step back from last year's Cy Young campaign. Colin McHugh, teams are sitting back on his off-speed pitches and driving them a little bit more. The bullpen has been, the big problem has been they traded quite a few assets to Philadelphia for Ken Giles with the hopes that he'd actually take over the closing job. And he didn't win that in spring training, and he's actually been just awful in his appearances. He's got an ERA over 8.5, but if he turns that around, they could have a lockdown bullpen. I mean, the thing is, they're 7 games back right now, and they really haven't hit like they wanted to. They definitely haven't pitched like they wanted to. So I think they can turn around. Like I said, in the American League, I don't think anyone's truly out of it yet, at least for a wild card spot.
Lots of parity, and that's why the Tigers could still be in the thick of things. And realistically, as you have said on today's podcast, Ryan, they really are at this early juncture in the campaign. And your Mariners now, where do they rank in the top 5 in the American League right now, in your opinion? And who else do you have in your top 5 American League ball clubs as of today?
Well, let's see. I think you have to put the White Sox up there. Their 1-2 punch of Sale and Quintana has just been fantastic, and they're getting clutch hits. Adam Eaton, in particular, has been very solid, leading off their attack. And, they seem to be running away with potential. I don't think anyone saw that going into this year, but, hey, you play the games on the field. I'd probably put them number 1. I'm inclined to put the Mariners number 2, even though, as a growing up Mariners fan, I don't know how much longer this can last, but they've been a lot of fun to watch. They've been fantastic in 1-run games. And, if Robbie Cano is going to hit like this all season, he's got a real shot at the MVP. I mean, he's already got 12 home runs, which is just amazing, especially playing in half his games in Seattle, where the park's fairly large. It's a little tougher to hit him out there. Beyond that, I'd say Baltimore has a pretty good case. Speaking of things that don't always work out for the Mariners, Mark Trumbo has been hitting out of his mind for the Orioles. And the Mariners traded him to Baltimore during the offseason. And the Orioles have a terrific, terrific offense. I mean, Manny Machado, can't say enough about him. The one thing that could hurt the Orioles, I think, is that they just lost J.J. Hardy for quite a while. And so they're sort of shuffling their lineup and I believe moving Machado to shortstop. And so we'll have to see how that affects them. Beyond that, I mean, Boston, they're right there. They're hanging with Baltimore. And then it gets to just kind of a whole mess. I mean, you never like to count out Tampa. They always seem to get things done. Kansas City, defending champs. And, Texas. Texas was hanging right with the Mariners. I mean, they certainly handled the Tigers just fine over the weekend. And anytime you have Cole Hamels going out there every 5 days, you're pretty well set up.
And Ryan, it's been the resurrection of Robbie Cano, don't you know, as he was with the Yankees, with the long ball now in Seattle, resurrection of that home run production. As you said, 12 home runs so far this year. And by the way, I know you know this already, but I'm going to reveal this stat to everybody else who's listening today. He hit 35 home runs in all of 2014 and 2015 combined. So, obviously, if he keeps it up, they're going to be a really, really good team. And right now they rank second in the AL in ERA, as well as first in saves and second in strikeouts recorded as a pitching staff. So, the M's right now looking mighty good, mighty strong in the American League, which, as you said, is full of parity. And Ryan, with that, thank you very much for all your time today on episode number 40 of Tigers Talk with Chirco and Company. I'll talk to you soon. And that was Ryan at the Ford on Twitter from the Detroit Free Press on episode number 40. Doc is back with me here in the studio as usual, and the Podfather. What are your thoughts on what Ryan Ford had to deliver today regarding the Tigers, and then his top 5 American League ball clubs, and looking at the Mariners and then the Astros too at the same time, Doc?
Well, when we talk to people, when I talk to people outside of the podcast and friends and things like that, a lot of people are feeling like, well, if you make a move to dismiss Brad Ausmus, who are you going to bring in here? What's really going to be the impact? What really sucks is that there really are no greater options. I mean, a lot of people are talking about Kirk Gibson, Ozzie Guillen, Lloyd McClendon, Ozzie Vizquel.
Vizquel?
Omar Vizquel.
Okay, yeah.
So, with that doesn't seem to me like one of those guys is going to come in here and produce like a 15-game winning streak. So Brad Ausmus is getting lucky on that front, and that's why a lot of people are like, he's not going to lose his job. I mean, if he bottoms out and they keep losing, they're going to have to by default, but I don't really have a lot of hope that somebody else will come in here and change the plight of the team. It's just basically the attitude of anybody but Brad. We're going to lose. Let's not just lose with this guy. And so I just think we want to start the new era for the Detroit Tigers without Brad Ausmus, and let's start that. And in future podcasts, and we've talked about it, and me and Jason talked about it a little bit, is maybe it's time to deconstruct. Maybe it's just time to really cut your losses and just tell yourself, listen, let's not drink the Kool-Aid. Let's not be, fanboys, and let's not just think that, we got Miggy, we got JV, we got Kinsler, we got VMart, JD, Castellanos. Maybe you got to make a move with Castellanos right now at his high point and get maybe 2 starters for him, and then you set yourself up to be successful in the next 5 years. I would say it's maybe time to start looking at selling. I know it's early, and I know a lot of people are snake bit from last year with the whole buy-sell, but I'm leaning toward the more we talk to people, maybe it's time to sell.
It's anybody but Trump in the American political landscape, especially for the Democratic Party, right? And even for some Republicans right now who are looking at Donald Trump right now as the presumptive, Republican nominee. They're running for the presidency. Not a lot of people are liking that. And then in Motown, it's anybody but Brad Ausmus right now. So anybody but Trump in the U.S. as a whole when you're talking about politics and who's going to be the next president. And for Tigers baseball and Motown, it's anybody but Brad Ausmus right now who people want to manage this ball club going forward. But you brought it up, too, made a very good point, and I think Ryan was even inferring this, that, who's the best candidate you can turn to? Who are the alternative solutions? They're not very enticing. They're not going to get us going. They're not getting you going, huh? Those managerial possibilities who they could turn to if they fire Brad Ausmus. And Ryan Ford brought it up, too, and I've brought it up. I think you even have on this podcast in the past, Doc. Jim Leyland, does he even want to come back to manage this ball club? If Brad Ausmus does get ousted, I don't think Leland wants this job at this point. It might even see the writing on the wall that this team's not good enough to take over and to lead to a division title, or at least to a playoff appearance via the wild card. So for me, I don't think Leland wants it, and you really want to turn to an inexperienced guy such as Omar Vizquel? I don't think they want to do that. They want to win this year, Doc.
You know what, Vito? I know you and I are the smartest guys in the room. So let's add ourselves to the meeting. Let's solve the Tigers' problems. Okay, we're going to first think about, before we talk about Bryce Harper, let's talk about solutions, because we all know the problems. And everybody's talking about how awful the Tigers are played this week. Let's solve the problem. Let's earn a check, and let's, make ourselves known as guys that are solution getters, guys that solve the problem. How the hell do we solve this mess? Let's solve it here in the next 10 minutes. How do we solve it? Is it something first by sending Tyler Collins back down and bringing up Steven Moya and figuring that out? First and foremost, what do you think would help this team win? Let's solve the problem.
Moya has to be called up at some point. Still mashing it big time. Well, he's a corner outfielder, and JD has struggled a little bit. You're not gonna have Steven Moya supplant JD Martinez, so we know that much in right field. But how about in left field? Jay Up continues to struggle. Maybe not as much as he did early on, obviously, when the season first started, and you want to get him reps, get him the at-bats that he needs to get into a groove at the plate. But Moya, how about him, maybe just sharing some duties there, or at least to spell Jay Up, to spell JD Martinez. They need his bat up. Let's just say that. He's a fourth outfielder, and he maybe is a very good one, okay? And as he has been doing so far, hitting, well, if he brings that to the major league level and hits as well as he has in AAA Toledo so far this year, well, you want that bat then off your bench. He'd be a quality fourth outfielder and pinch hitter who can provide some pop off the bench. And a pinch hit appearance like last night, or in other future games when they have to turn to a guy from off the bench. Instead of turning to Tyler Collins, you've got Moya then off the bench, who's a lot more, in my opinion, reliable at this point than Tyler Collins, who's batting, from my knowledge, sub-200, which is batting below the Mendoza line, Doc.
Why are people saying Moya doesn't have a spot? Because they're in the National League this week, or what's going on?
Because he really isn't a great fielder, and you got Jay Up in left and JD Martinez in right, so he's not going to start, so you're not going to be able to give him a lot of at-bats, okay, to where he can make an impact consistently, and you want him to make an impact when he comes up. Well, you really can't do that as a bench guy, as a fourth outfielder. But he's still a hell of a lot better than Tyler Collins right now. Tyler Collins can't even hit the baseball, hitting below 200, like I said. So you want a guy like Moya then to be called up who's younger, more of a top prospect. He was a top organizational prospect at one point. So why not turn to Moya right now and demote Collins? I know they just called him back up, but if Collins continues to not be able to get it done, I think Moya has to be your guy, but that's not going to solve all their issues.
Well, I'm going to pander to the crowd first and foremost.
Yeah.
You know what? There's one lucky guy in Detroit that earned a contract that, we're just going to have to eat it. Mike Pelfrey, cut him.
Cut him.
Just
cut him loose. You know what? Why would you want that guy in the bullpen as a long reliever? You got better long relief options than Mike Pelfrey at this point, too, so cut him completely and never have to deal with him again. That's a good resolution to solve the issue with him as a fifth starter, but you got to make sure that Norris, I think, can come back and be healthy then. Norris has struggled, from my knowledge, as well in AAA so far, and he's got to be healthy when he comes back, I think, before they make that move to cut Pelfrey. But if Norris comes back and is really good over a 5-start period, let's say, I think Pelfrey is then a goner for sure. And, because Shane Green's hurt right now, too, remember. So Green's hurt. Norris is still rehabbing and kind of struggling right now in AAA on his rehab assignment. So these guys have to get back and be good before I think you cut Mike Pelfrey.
And now,
Doc.
do we start laying the discipline? Does Miggy have to take a seat for a couple days no matter what happens? Do we have to discipline him and just say, listen, your play is just not good enough. It's not to the standard that we like. Hit the bench.
Well, then he's getting thrown out, going to third base stupidly. Like, he almost hurt himself at second. Now, he did come up limping, right? Hobbled after that. Then he goes and steals third base, tries to, because he didn't try to very well. He got thrown out.
It was a bad pitch.
Well, still.
Yeah.
He took the extra base thinking he's smart. He's not as smart of a base runner maybe as I have even thought, because him doing that when they're in that type of situation, when they've been struggling to score runs too, and no run is safe right now because the pen's blowing everything. So you need those runs. They're at a premium right now, every single run. Then you go do that, you make a stupid base running mistake, get thrown out at third, and he got thrown out pretty well. The ball was there pretty well ahead of him diving or sliding into third there. So I didn't like that out of Cabby. But to answer your question now, to really sit him, no. He's Cabby. He's hitting better. Now, a guy that maybe you should sit for a prolonged period of time would be a guy such as, JD's been struggling a little bit. Maybe him, maybe. Now, J-Up, though, is a bigger issue, right? He's a bigger candidate for benching. And he's got a big contract just like Cabby, or at least JD doesn't, and JD, I think, will come out of the slump he's in, and he's got to hit in the 2-hole. That's their bigger concern. Their bigger issue for me right now is that who's hitting second? JD Martinez is not a prototypical second hitter. He is not, because he doesn't get on base good enough. He's not speedy enough to hit second. Really, Kinsler should be doing that, but then, once again, you got an issue there at the top of the lineup, hitting leadoff. Who is that guy? If you don't have Kinsler there, because Ghost can't get on base to save his life. He might be DFA'd soon enough. I think that could be the case. Maybe Moya can play a little bit of center. I don't think he really can get it done there and cover all that ground in spacious Comerica Park. But once Maben comes up, I think Maben is going to be more of that starting center fielder, because Ghost has struggled so mightily. So Maben, I pray to God really, Doc, that he can hit, because if he does, I think Ghost will get DFA'd. And that might solve an issue they have hitting leadoff, because right now it's Kinsler, and Kinsler could be a better second hitter who brings the speed but can also hit for power, because you need that kind of hitting second, and you need a speedy option there. JD Martinez is not that speedy option, and even J-Up is really not that. And when he's not getting on base, which has been the case so far this year, he can't hit second. So you would like to slide Kinsler to second if a guy like Maben, when he comes back off the DL, can hit and be that leadoff hitter.
And so now we'll talk more about some lineup changes too as well, but I'm bringing the X in a symbolic gesture.
Okay.
You guys have lost 7 straight. You maybe go into these next couple games and lose. Wally Joyner, Gene Lamont, hit the road, Jack.
They're not going to fire Gene Lamont, and that's not going to do anything.
What is Gene Lamont doing?
You said firing Brad Ausmus wouldn't do anything. Well, how's that going to do anything? I don't care if he's just sitting there eating sunflower seeds all day long. He's not going to make an impact. Hasn't and won't by getting him fired.
You ever hear the name George Steinbrenner? That dude hired and fired the same manager a couple times.
Well, Billy Martin 3-4 times. Yeah, it happened.
Listen, Gene Lamont, you've been sitting there collecting dust.
Looks like sitting on his behind eating sunflower seeds.
It looks like his waistline has expanded quite a bit in his time here. Thank you, but your tutelage of Brad Ausmus, see ya. I would you have to make a move.
But what is that going to do? Firing Brad Ausmus, you said, is not going to do anything, and it might not. I'm going to agree with you to a certain extent. It might not, but firing Gene Lamont, then the bench coach, what is that going to do to save the Tigers' season? It's not going to do anything. He's just sitting on his behind, collecting dust.
Listen, what it's going to do is going to send the message that this is unacceptable, and we're not yet ready to fire the big boss, but we're going to fire his underlings. Hey, you got to send.
How's that going to help out Brad Ausmus, though?
Well, listen,
he's learning something from Lamont, right? A little bit. At least.
You ever hear of kind of sending a message So obviously we're going to fire Brad Ausmus, but just not this week. We're going to let it play out. We're going to fire Brad Ausmus. Duh, Vito. Come on, we're going to fire him. But what we're going to do is we're going to let it kind of drag out a little bit just for our own entertainment. We're going to fire his underlings. Maybe he'll quit. Then we don't have to pay him.
That's your hope. He quits because he's going to be so woeful because his man Gene Lamont gets fired.
Maybe. Maybe.
The guy he's been studying under, like you said, and Ausmus is that understudy. Thing is, Ausmus, I don't think will care that much. Gene Lamont has gone to the point where he will quit, and I don't think that'll teach Brad Ausmus really anything. Maybe put some, fire under his behind even more. But Ausmus already knows his job's on the line. He's already made that clear, Doc. Remember too.
Listen, I want to ask you this: Did the Tigers make a mistake? Is Brad Ausmus a lame duck because they declined the option to extend him? He's now on his last year of his guaranteed contract. Did they make a mistake? And would you think that this is what happens when a manager becomes a lame duck? You got a team like this, and they're just kind of going through the motions.
I don't think they're going through the motions. They're just not performing. So that's why I don't think it's totally on Brad Ausmus once again. But do you fire him if they keep losing? Like I said, if they lose the next 2 against the Nats and lose 3 out of 4 against the Orioles, then I think you do fire him, even though he really, at that point, is just by default the scapegoat for the Tigers' struggles so far this year.
I'm not so certain that these guys are going balls to the wall for Brad Ausmus. Yeah, they're saying all the right things in public, but based on their mistakes...
B-Mark, though, just defended him. And the question really is, sorry to cut you off, but... would they play more for Jim Leyland? Go more balls to the wall? If they had Jim Leyland as their skipper, would it get them to play better, motivate them to play better? I don't think that's totally true, though, because he might be the guy that comes in if Ausmus is fired.
Let Jim Leyland retire. We don't want to give him a headache. Dude's old. He served his time.
Well, no country for old men. If you're firing Lamont, by the way, Leyland's not coming here.
Exactly.
There's no country for old men then at all if Lamont's fired.
Give it to Vizquel. Let him roll with it. Let him be the interim for a year. Then maybe you go out, you find a guy with more experience. Maybe someone else gets fired, and you bring him here. But you got to start making changes. You got to make a fire. So first move I'm making, firing a couple guys, bring up Steven Moya, let go of Pelfrey, and then you got to look at the offense is starting to do okay. They're scoring runs. You got to now kind of reshape that bullpen, and maybe Wilson will take more of a role. Alex Wilson came in; he was pretty much productive in his first couple starts. Maybe you give other guys in the minors a chance to come up here and do their thing. Hell, you're 3 games under with what you're doing. Maybe you go to the minors and look to other guys.
I don't know if that's the solution you can turn to. And I think Alex Wilson has done better of late. 2.61 ERA. I just looked. He has that right now going into Tuesday night's game. So I like him. I like what he can do. And the bullpen is in much better shape still, even though Mark Lowe has struggled. But I wanted to say Mark Lowe is my buster of the week, by the way. And we can get into that in a second. But I think DFAing Pelfrey and calling up Moy will not solve all their issues, as it won't be the case when they fire. It seems like presumably will fire Ausmus. The fate seems inevitable. But even when they do that, when they DFA, if they DFA Pelfrey, when they call up Moy, if they call up Moy, I think calling up Moy will happen for sure. That's one thing of those 3 options that could happen, that could maybe turn around their season. Moyle will be called up because he's hitting so great, and Collins hasn't hit to save his life, and Ghost hasn't. That's more of the, I think, big question. What do you do with Anthony Ghost when Maben comes up? Now, do you DFA Ghost eventually if Maben really hits the heck out of the ball? Because I think at first we're going to platoon those guys as they planned on at the beginning of the year, to platoon Maben and Ghost in center field. But if Ghost continues to hit below the Mendoza line, okay, as he has for much of the season, do you DFA Ghost at that point? Because that's their major issue in the lineup. And I think that kind of glaring hole there is a bigger one than some of their bullpen arms struggling, because I think their bullpen arms will turn it around. So for me, it's their 3 through 5 in the rotation. Can that be saved? Can that be turned around? I don't have much hope in that for the Tigers this season, unless they make a move or two, and they can't just do that right now. It's going to happen maybe around the July 31st non-waiver trade deadline. But the best you can do at that point, probably, if you're still in contention, please pray for that to happen, because I don't think you can even guarantee that at this point with the Tigers 3 games under 500. But if they are in enough contention at that point to play for a wild card spot at least, you make that move for 1 rotation arm, but getting 2 as they need right now probably won't happen because it doesn't give you enough time to add 2 rotation arms. So I think their rotation is unsavable at this point when you talk about their 3 through 5 options in that roto this year, as I like to call it. And then it's about a guy like Ghost, that glaring hole in center field. If Maben doesn't hit, that's a glaring hole for the entirety of the season. And then we haven't even mentioned Iglesias really hasn't hit this year. So think about that. And McCann hasn't hit this year. So if Salty doesn't keep it up, you have a hole there at catcher with McCann not hitting, a hole at shortstop with Iglesias not truly hitting, and a whole big-time hole, and the biggest one by far for me in the Tigers lineup 1 through 9 in center field with Ghosts not hitting. So a lot of things have to be resolved, and firing a manager will not be the be-all, end-all to solving the Tigers' issues as a whole this season, to sum it up. And I think Leland will not be taking over the job, by the way. I think he doesn't want it. And I think, as you said, I think you pinpointed it when talking about Gene Lamont, and we joked about him, but it's no country for old men. So Leland is not the guy you turn to. But then, you turn to Vizquel, you let him be the interim guy for the rest of this season, and then if he does well enough, maybe he becomes a manager full-time next year. Well, that's a good option. But the thing is now, what is the plan of the Tigers? Is it to win this year? Is that their motto? Is that their mentality this year, still to win it? Because if they still want to make the playoffs, is Vizquel truly the guy that you want to turn to, Doc, as an inexperienced guy? Don't you have to kind of contemplate that as well?
Yeah, I would think that right now, a lot of people are also kind of clamoring for Kirk Gibson. Listen, with his health and what's going on,
I don't think he'll want to.
And he doesn't have a history of winning seasons. He's a good guy, good analyst, and he's a guy that would be a good guy to motivate these guys. But I would just say right now, Omar Vizquel would be a placekeeper. I think that right now you do need a couple moves to have a shakeup and to change up the flow. Maybe the guys would play just a little bit harder for him, and maybe those mental mistakes would be cut down. Really, what's so challenging is the Tigers aren't that far away if they just played a little bit better. And so maybe with just a change in the voice, then maybe this thing will pick up and you get right back to it. Hell, maybe just one simple change, you might get back to winning more games and losing. You never know.
And now time for my buster of the week. Let's talk about Mark Lowe and how mightily he has struggled, huh? A 7.71 ERA through 13 games pitched out of the Tigers' pen so far this year, as of Tuesday's recording here. And he has now allowed, listen to this, 7 earned runs in the last 3 games as of Tuesday's recording, and in the last 3 days of 7 earned runs, to be exact, he has allowed, including the Nats' walk-off home run Monday night, and 2 home runs allowed, plus 5 earned runs on Mother's Day in the top of the 8th inning. And the Tigers are led 2-0 going into the 8th, and then they came out of it trailing 7-2 because of Lowe's miscues and struggles big time in the top of the 8th on Mother's Day. So he got bombed then, has been bombed of late, gives up the walk-off home run against the Nationals Monday night as well. He has struggled mightily, and he is my buster of the week because of that, Doc. Now, for you, let's get you now involved here, and I want to hear about your toast of the town for this week's podcast. Who is that?
I like guys with bravado. I like guys who struggle, face the media, and own up to their problems. Justin Verlander came out and was like, listen, I will be dominant again. I have to pitch better. He came out on Sunday's performance and was absolutely lights out, and it was BS that he got the fate that he did. But in the end, JV gets a toast. He gets to sit at the table with the Podfather, and I tell him, listen, good for you. Now let's build upon this, and let's get this to be more consistent. Let's shut up all this talk about you and your engagement and your Kate Upton curse. Let's continue to work on you learning the art of pitching and getting guys out, and let's go. You got to be a leader. And so JV, toast of the town with the Podfather.
So you tell him good for you after what you did, right, over the weekend. But, hey, bring aboard Kate Upton. I want her at the dinner, too, right, as part of the toast of the town. Wouldn't you want her to be there as well?
Listen, you don't got to have all the motives. Maybe you have a chance to kind of, maybe he'll bring her. So you wouldn't tell him, hey, JV, you kind of have to bring Kate Upton to be the toast of the town here. Right. You kind of hope that maybe, hey, I got a friend. She may be at the table as well. If you want to bring any friends of yours, hey, everyone's welcome.
It could be a couple's night out, too. You and your wife and JV and Kate Upton. I mean, 2 big dogs there, you and JV, 2 big money makers. You're the Podfather. He's the godfather of the Tigers rotation at this point. So it would be fitting if you brought your wife and then he brings Kate Upton, his soon-to-be wife, as part of the toast of the town. And what a dinner that would be between you and JV. And, hey, the couples going out on the town one night. That'd be great. Great to see, Doc.
Now, Vito, before we get out of here,
yes,
you definitely spoke with Ryan about it. What are your thoughts about Bryce Harper and what he did at the end of the game? Lay it out for everybody that hasn't seen it. Everyone's talking about it.
Yeah, he pretty much just said F you to the umpire who ejected him before that because he was arguing balls and strikes from the dugout of the Nationals Monday night. And what he did, I think, after the walk-off home run was hit for the Nats Monday night was classless because he's trying to make baseball fun again, but that's not making baseball fun again, Doc. So I did not like it. I cannot stand that, and I think there's no rhyme or reason for what he did. Taking it out on the umpire when they were celebrating a walk-off home run. Why do it then, right? Why go into that rant? Lay into the umpire at that point in the ballgame when your team is celebrating around you. So I call that an act that is uncalled for and pretty darn classless in my opinion. Doc, your thoughts on the incident Monday night involving Bryce Harper?
Listen, I like a guy with passion. I kind of like the hashtag make baseball fun again. But at the same time, this is one of those things I feel like I don't want to waffle, but you got kids watching. It's a family sport. It's not a good look, but I love his passion. I love the fact this is a guy that, has a lot of passion. And you got to remember, this is after a walk-off home run where you're really excited. You got the adrenaline flowing. I don't think it was the right gesture, maybe in terms of spelling it out. I know that, a lot of baseball players don't like the way the umpires are calling balls and strikes. You want them to be consistent. And it looked like he was singled out. It didn't look like he was I know he was chirping a lot in the dugout, but it might have been a situation where it could have been handled a little bit differently by the umpire, maybe not tossing Bryce Harper. It's not a good look. It's not something you want to do regularly. I get it that he's a productive player and people forgive him because he's productive. It's just not the best look, but I can forgive it. I would just be something like if you have him on your team, you pull him aside and you just go, come on, a little easy, but you don't reprimand him or nothing. You let him do his thing, but it's a minor violation is how I would describe it. It's not a great look because there's a lot of kids in the stands. There's a lot of kids that watch it, and you want to gear it toward more family-friendly type atmosphere. I get it, but I also love his passion too at the same time. So I would, if I'm Major League Baseball, let it slide.
Well, he brings that bravado. I know you've talked about that. You like that passion out of your ball players there, and he brings it. He's really the top-of-the-line guy when it comes to bringing passion every single day he plays the game of baseball there for the Nationals. And it's great to see a guy like that, who is the best player in all of baseball realistically right now, bring that passion every day he puts his spikes on and goes out there to play for the Nationals. So I love the passion, but I think it was wasted in that moment. And that moment, it was an inopportune moment to show the passion that he did going after the umpire. It was a time to celebrate with your teammates, to show passion in terms of being celebratory. You know what I mean? To show more class is what he should have done too. He should have done that because it was a fun moment, a good moment for him and his teammates to celebrate once again and not to show up the umpire at that point when all of baseball, all the eyes are on you because of what just happened, but because he's the best player on the diamond there too, and probably in all of baseball, like I said, as well at the same time. So even though he probably doesn't want to be totally viewed as a role model, but he is that guy for making baseball fun again, right? So there are a lot of young kids that want to watch him, do see him, and lay their eyes on him. And so in that moment, all the cameras are on him, too, and captured that. They blurted out what he said, but obviously you can make out what he did say using the explicitive that he did in the direction of the umpire who ejected him prior to that walk-off home run hit by the Nationals Monday night. But at the end of the day, you got to show your bravado, you got to show all that passion in another way, exert it in another fashion, in a more positive fashion. And that's how you actually don't show up the umpire and make baseball fun again as well in the process. So that was my problem with Bryce Harper, how he utilized that passion Monday night and going after the umpire. That is always uncalled for, in my opinion, no matter where you stand in baseball. So no matter what your stature is, always uncalled for in the game of baseball. And I think in professional sports, Doc, honestly, as a whole. And with that, Doc, thank you very much for all your time. Always great stuff from you, Doc.
Welcome to the 40/40 Club, baby. Good job. 40 podcasts in, going strong. Great guests, great interviews, and I got something to tell you off the air when we're done here.
All right. Sounds good, Doc. Thank you, and thanks, everybody, for tuning in to episode number 40 of the podcast. We'll talk to you again next week for episode number 41 of Tigers Talk with Chirco and Company.